Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I'm a chiropractor by training, but I found my passion empowering parents like you to teach their little ones to sleep and parent confidently day and night. And I am so excited to be partnering with Nanit to bring expert content to the Nanit community. The community is a place for parents like you to connect with other parents and caregivers on all things parenting. You'll find a variety of content and resources from health and lifestyle experts, giving you tips and tricks to hopefully make your life as a parent a little bit easier. The best part, it's free and open to anyone and everyone. Join the conversation today at community.nanit.com, and you can see the address at the bottom of the slide. Today, we're going to be talking about, let me review the agenda with you. Here we go. We're going to talk about the two main reasons your baby struggles with sleep, why you get stuck with 45-minute naps, how the drive to sleep is biological, but the way we sleep is learned, how great sleep isn't just one quick tip, how it's a methodology, and we'll talk about the 5 pillars of the Helping Baby Sleep method that help you have a great night's sleep. We'll talk about understanding how sleep's a learned habit, timing, feeding, messaging, and responding. And we'll go over how much sleep your baby needs. So let's dive in. There are 2 main reasons your baby struggles with sleep. The first one is that your child is reliant on something external to fall asleep. And we're talking babies 4 to 24 months here. Something external to fall asleep. What is that? Well, those are commonly known as sleep crutches. And generally, there are 3 classifications that help kids relax into sleep. Sucking, maybe it's a bottle, a breast, or a pacifier. Motion, such as being in a carrier, a stroller, a car, a swing. And touch, being held, patted, even co-sleeping qualifies in there. So your baby relies on something external to help them relax into sleep. And then when they wake in the night, which all humans wake in the night, you and I do, but we just don't remember it so much. Well, maybe now that we have kids, we remember it a lot more. But when we didn't have kids, we woke up lots in the night. We just didn't remember it because it was so quick. But your kiddo surfaces from a sleep cycle and then looks for the same help he or she had falling asleep to go back to sleep. Okay? The second reason is that many of our kids who wake up frequently in the night, they are in a little bit of a sleep debt or overtired. So over time, maybe it was days, maybe it was weeks, for some people it might be months, your kiddo didn't get quite enough sleep. And this made it harder for them to fall asleep and then stay asleep. And then they wake up at night and look for that same thing that helped them fall asleep in the first place, okay? So sleep does beget sleep. The more well-rested a kiddo is, the easier it is to get them to fall asleep and then stay asleep. And that's a positive feedback loop, right? And on the other hand, the more overtired they are, the harder it is to get them to fall asleep and then stay asleep. So for example, I remember having 2 pivotal moments with my son, my first one, who just didn't sleep very well, right? The first one, he just kept waking up at night, kept being fussy. And I remember the day that I realized I could just go in and put a boob in his mouth and he would relax back down and fall back asleep. I'd realized that he had come to associate having my breast in his mouth with falling asleep. I also remember we were working on different sleep crutches. We actually had all 3. We had rocking, nursing, and being swung as our sleep crutches. And on another night, I'd spent 40 minutes getting him to fall asleep in his bassinet, only to have him wake up 20 minutes into sleep. And that's because he was overtired by the time I got him to sleep. So those are the 2 main reasons your kiddos struggle with sleep. The main reasons behind 45-minute naps. In general, after 4 months, 4 months is an interesting time. Like you might only have 45-minute naps. Ideally, we're looking for 1 nap over 45 minutes at 4 months. Your circadian rhythm evolves and matures around 6 months. And so by 6 months, many kids are on a very similar napping pattern. But before that, there may be some variation. And if you're interested in learning more about baby sleep science, check out the other webinar that we have on that topic. But in general, if you've got a kiddo 4 months and older who will only take 45-minute naps, the reason is that they are not connecting their sleep cycle because they're reliant on something external to help them fall asleep at the beginning of the nap. And then when they surface from that cycle, they look for that same thing. So for example, 45-minute naps, I definitely had them for some time, right? And it was because I would nurse him down, put him down, but then he would wake up 45 minutes and say, hey, where am I? I'm not in arms. And where did that wonderful boob go? I need that thing again. Where is that? I'm still tired. Oh, that would feel good to nurse, have some comfort that way, and maybe I'll fall back asleep that way. So that's the reason for 45-minute naps. Okay. And maybe it's not nursing to sleep. It could be a pacifier. It could be being rocked. It could be even co-sleeping. Just even having the warmth, the presence of a human being next to a kiddo can be very relaxing, right? Here's the thing about great sleep, guys. It's not just one quick tip. Okay. That can help, but it's not going to solve your sleep problems if you have only 45-minute naps or if you have multiple night waking. Because here's the thing. You don't think about this, but sleep is actually a learned skill, right? It's a learned skill. Great sleep is all about balancing the biology and the physiology of sleep behind the behavior, because it is an art and a science. Let's dive into the 5 pillars of the Helping Baby Sleep method to help you get those great sleep, okay? So first of all, we need to understand that the drive to sleep is biological, but the way we sleep is a learned habit. And that can be mind-blowing because we see all these wonderful, beautiful pictures of these little newborns sleeping in a fruit basket or a pumpkin. And we think, oh, they sleep anywhere, anytime. And that's kind of true for those first few weeks of life. But as they get older, they have more awake time and they're more aware of their surroundings. And then you have to work harder at getting your kiddo to sleep. Now, as far as it being a learned habit, think about this, okay? So the drive to sleep is biological. We all have a buildup of a protein that signals our brain when it's time to sleep. And when your kiddo is growing exponentially, you're going to need more sleep because that protein, that sleep pressure rises more quickly. Okay. But the way we sleep is a learned habit. And think about yourselves. Okay. You have a little bedtime routine. You climb into bed, you find your favorite position, and then you relax yourself down into sleep. Now, tonight, if I said, you can't sleep in your favorite position, and I'm going to take away your pillow, that would be very uncomfortable for you. You would toss and turn, you might be frustrated, but eventually you would learn a new way to fall asleep, okay? And the same is with our kiddos. That's one of the aspects of, if you will, sleep training. I like to call it sleep teaching because we actually are teaching a new skill. But when you change the way your child falls asleep, when you decide maybe to stop nursing them to sleep or stop using the pacifier, your child will be uncomfortable. But that's just one, and responding to the tears, that is just one of the pillars. That's the last pillar that we'll talk about here. But really understanding that sleep is a learned skill is kind of mind-blowing, right? Because you think it should be this natural, instinctual thing. And yes, the drive to sleep is natural, instinctual, but the way we sleep is a learned habit. The second pillar of the Helping Baby Sleep method is timing. Timing is key to helping you implement a flexible schedule, okay? I find fixed schedules for most people, especially at the beginning of your great sleep journey, are really hard because they often set you up to fail. Because on that schedule, it assumes, to match that schedule, it assumes that your kiddo will nap exactly as long as written on that schedule. And when you're struggling with sleep, naps are one of the last things to improve. And so when I was going through this, I really found like those set schedules just set me up to fail. I never seemed to be hitting them. I was always behind. And then I didn't know what to do when the nap was shorter than what was on the piece of paper, right? Do I put them down early? Do I keep them up to that next nap time? I was unsure. And those feelings don't feel good, right? So the Helping Baby Sleep method is teaching you a flexible schedule, because then you acquire the parenting skills to kind of manage when things don't always go your way, which is very common in the parenting world, right? So timing. So here's the thing about timing. Putting your kiddo down too early or too late can make it harder for them to go to sleep. Okay, this is again all about that sleep pressure, which you may have heard of called awake times, right? There's an observation out there that certain kids by certain months can stay awake comfortably a certain length of time. So for example, a 5-month-old can comfortably stay awake about 2 hours between sleeps. And when you surpass 2 hours, it gets harder for them to fall asleep or they end up taking shorter naps, okay? So one of the things that I did wrong when I was going through this is we kept my son up longer thinking that he would sleep better, but it really doesn't work that way. That's one really simple thing that you can implement right day. If there's a quick tip, it's that, okay? It's a quick tip, it's that putting your kiddos down at their appropriate awake time can really help minimize how hard it is to get them down, but also decrease your night wakings. When I'm working with a client, the first thing we look at is just timing alone, and getting kids down for an appropriate bedtime or not as long between naps can actually decrease the number of night wakings. So timing is key. Okay, putting kids down too early or too late can make it harder. And that's extremely important when you're taking away that known sleep crutch. So when you're at the stage that you're ready to work on the way they fall asleep, trying to encourage independent sleep skills, right? By taking away, say, the nursing or the rocking to sleep, you really want to be cognizant of your timing. Okay, so 5 months, that's 2 hours, 6 months, 2.5, 7 months, 2 hours, 45 minutes, 8 and 9 months, roughly 3 hours, 10, 11 months, roughly 3 hours and a half, 12 months, roughly 3 hours and 3 to 4 hours. And then when you get to one nap, things shift a little bit. When you're on one nap, the awake time before nap is often about 5 to 6 hours, and after nap, it's around 4 to 5 hours. If you just follow those right now, start implementing that, that can really help decrease your night waking and or the length of your naps. So timing, okay, timing. Keeping them up longer will not help them sleep better. Trust me, I have done that, and I can tell you that that doesn't work, okay? The third pillar of the helping babies sleep method is being an intentional feeder. Now, this is for the 4 to 24-month-old crowd, right? So I realized I come from an attachment parenting background. I really wanted to nurse on demand and baby wear and co-sleep, and I love the principles of it, that natural parenting ideal, okay? Especially, because I come from a chiropractic background. Unfortunately, it just didn't work for me, which is one of the great lessons of parenting, is that you often have a great intention, but it might not work for your kiddo, that method, or for your family. And for us, it just didn't work. I was waking up every 2 hours just nursing him back to sleep. And here's why, okay? And don't get me wrong, nursing to sleep is extremely important in those first month to help get your supply up. Okay. But when it's time to work on sleep, you have to think about your feeding patterns. Because imagine this. Imagine you let your kiddo ask to be fed anytime during the day and they get to feed, especially when the toddler years. How unfair is it or confusing for them? Is it in the evening then or the nighttime when you don't let them feed whenever they want? You're kind of giving two mixed messages, right? And how do kids learn? And this goes back to the first pillar, right? How do kids learn? They learn with repetition, consistency, getting the same response to the same condition every time, right? So if you're giving mixed messages, it can make it harder for them to learn. So being an intentional feeder is one of the pillars here if you're ready to work on sleep. During the day, can I bring my child to the bottle or the breast and have them take a full feed? You want to get full feedings, because how that helps you, it helps you rule out self-doubt about why they're fussy later on. Okay. One of the most common mistakes I see, and I made it too, is that I mistook the cues of fatigue for hunger. And so I would bring him to feed and he would fall asleep, take a short feed and then fall asleep because I had competing needs there. He ended up actually being more tired than hungry. But now I'm pushing myself into what we refer to as the snacking cycle. So he takes this short little feed, falls asleep, has a crappy little nap, wakes up, unsatisfied, wants to nurse again because that's how he knows to fall asleep. And maybe he does fall back asleep or he stays awake, but now he had a short nap, unsatisfying, and he's had 2 snacks. So you can bet he's going to want to nurse again in probably an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, because he snacked and he's tired, and you stay stuck in this cycle. So the purpose of being an intentional feeder is to get you out of that snacking cycle, to have your child come to the breast or the bottle and take a full feed. And, for a 4 to 6 month old, that might be 4 to 6 ounces. For breastfeeding, it's draining one side completely, taking half the other side, right? And those ounces will go up as they get older, okay? That helps you then. An hour later, when they're fussy, you can say, well, I know it's not hunger because we had a really good feed an hour ago. So rule that off my short list of why your kiddo is struggling right now. Okay, so then, looking back to your flexible schedule, how long has it been since my kiddo's been awake? Maybe they're tired now. And also, don't underestimate boredom. Yeah, kids get fussy when they're bored. I know I for sure did this. Like I would just feed him. And then he has a nice little feed, it's relaxing, it's comforting. Who wouldn't want to feed, right? And, but I just kind of band-aided the root issue with that feed. And I kept myself stuck in that snacking cycle, right? So feeding on demand is wonderful, but if you're ready to work on sleep skills, you might have to start thinking about consolidating your daytime feeds, having feeding windows, 3 to 4 hours between feeds where your child then can come, take a full feed. I commonly work with like 8, 9, 10-month-olds who are distracted eaters, okay? And they are distracted because they are stuck in the snacking cycle. They snack whenever they want, and so they never come and eat a full feed. But once you start spacing out the feeds and being really much more intentional about it, they start to have longer, more sustainable feeds where they're getting that fatty hind milk from the breast milk and being satiated and being then able to go longer. So that's the third pillar, being an intentional feeder. And it's daytime and nighttime. The fourth pillar is like the messaging around sleep. Okay, so this includes your bedtime routines and your nap time routines. Yes, you want little routines because we have evidence to show that as early as 4 months, kids can start recognizing little sequences and cues. So that means, coming into the space that you're going to be sleeping for the night. Do your routine all in the room that they're going to be sleeping. Dim the lights, maybe play a lullaby, set the stage for sleep, have your little red bedtime routine. And ideally, it helps to have a couple steps that you do in the same order every night. And then your caregiver can do that same steps. Your spouse can do those same steps. And your child then knows what to expect, because how do you learn? With repetition, right? Consistency. Okay. So, that might be dimming the lights. Maybe you have feeding as part of your routine. Maybe you don't. You have a couple board books. Maybe you sing your baby a lullaby, and then they go into sleep. Okay. You're going to do the exact same thing for your naps, right? Whether you're not having feeding as part of it, that's debatable, but a same sequence to let them know what's coming, right? And this goes into the messaging. Also, we talk about like the environment of sleep, right? You want a firm, safe sleep space for your kiddo. As early as 4 months, even earlier, really, you're starting to message sleep happens. So maybe in the newborn stage, they could sleep anywhere. They could sleep with lights on in the living room, but now it's time to be delineating nighttime sleep, but also like just naps. Sleep is in the dark, sleep is in your crib. Where is it happening, right? Messaging around sleep. If you want great sleep, you just can't have them on the go really as much anymore. That being said, right, you can't stay home all the time. It's really important for your mental health if you're a stay-at-home mom. So maybe you plan that certain naps of the day you're going to have on the go, but you're going to keep that kiddo in motion for 45 minutes. So you can at least get a 45-minute nap in. I used to say mornings are for me, afternoons are for you, meaning I could wake you up early to go to an exercise class that I wanted to be at, or appointments that we had to have, but I would try and protect those afternoon naps, because as your kiddo gets older, those are the important naps. So I would protect that afternoon nap because that's generally the longer nap. And that's the one that's gonna set you up for a great bedtime by being well rested after that nap for your bedtime coming. So those are the important factors around messaging around sleep. And the fifth pillar of the Helping Babies Sleep method is responding. Right? And this is really what most people think about when they think about sleep training, which again, if you know me and you're listening, I dislike that term. It sounds very harsh and cruel. It's sleep teaching because that's what we're doing. This is your first parenting foray into teaching your little one something new. And this goes back to responding. So let's say you worked on timing, you worked on messaging, maybe some of you, that's all you need to do to have great leaps in your sleep. Okay. For others of you, those may have helped, but they didn't solve the issue. You're still waking up 2, 3 times at night to help your little one back to sleep. And at that point, you may say, gosh, the way that we're doing things is unsustainable, and I need to make a change so that you can become an independent sleeper. And an independent sleeper, what is that? It's a kiddo who can be put down completely awake, not drowsy at all. And on my book, The Helping Babies Sleep Method, we talk about why drowsy but awake is setting you up to fail. Because remember, sleep's a habit. So if I make you drowsy at bedtime and you wake up in the night, you are looking to be made drowsy again to go back to sleep. So independent sleepers are put down completely awake, and they can make themselves relaxed in the crib or the space that they're going to be sleeping for the night. Okay. And when we talk about responding, this is where people talk about cry it out. And anytime you hear cry it out, I want you to be a critical thinker and say, what is your definition of cry it out? Because there are wildly different definitions of cry it out, just as there are wildly different definitions of what does sleeping through the night mean. Okay. So cry it out to me The true definition is extinction, to close the door and not go back in. And I personally, there's lots of ways to raise your kiddo. And I think if it's working for you, awesome. But for me, that doesn't feel comfortable because I like to imagine that I'm that little person and I'm in that crib crying and I'm like, hey, does anyone even hear me? In addition, if you've had a kiddo that's been sleeping in arms or, having naps on you, that's a huge leap. And huge leaps are where people tend to have trouble, right? It's too much change too quickly. So with responding, will there be tears? So I have definitely had kids have no tears. When we took away maybe nursing, but we offered shushing and patting to go down, right? There are kids, there will be no tears. Why? Well, the amount of tears is dependent on three things, okay? One is your ability to nail the timing of sleep. So again, putting them down too early or too late will set you up to fail. Or make it harder, I should say, not to fail. The second thing is your ability to be consistent. So if you're like stutter starting, so that's the thing. If you're going to work on this part of sleep, make sure you have a plan. You have, a few days in your calendar clear that you're dedicated to this, because stutter starting, when you start a little bit, you let them cry for a bit, and then you don't feel comfortable about where it's going. You pick them up and rock them. It's really confusing, right? So it makes it harder for your kiddo to learn, and it prolongs the whole process. Okay. So with responding with tears, right, that's what I was going with. And then the third thing is your child's temperament, okay? Some kids are just more flexible than other kids. So I've definitely worked with parents where we're like, wow, there was no tears, that's incredible. But I would say, guys, that's not the norm. Most kids will cry to protest change. We're making it a bit more uncomfortable. Think about yourself, right? You went to bed that night, I told you couldn't sleep in that position, and I'm taking away your pillow. Frustrating, annoying, you're tired, you just want to get to sleep. Mama, why are you making this different than it normally is? I do not like this. And your child is allowed to express their frustration to you, right? And most people, when they've reached that point, they do that because all the no tear methods have not worked for them. Everyone has different thresholds, right? There's many different ways to raise your kiddo. You just have to figure out what works for you and your little person's personality, right? That's the big wow thing. Because I definitely have parents who got tips from their neighbors. Their neighbor told them to do X, Y, and Z because it worked for their family in like 2 nights, but they implemented it and it didn't work for their family. Why is that? Well, could be the habits were ingrained for a much longer time. Could be they didn't think about the timing of sleep, the feeding, the intentional feeding during the day, or it could be that their little one is just that much more strong-willed, right? But responding, there will likely be some tears, but it doesn't mean that you have to leave them alone in a room. And you can work on sleep by starting on those 4 pillars before you get to that point, okay? Little tips here about how much sleep does your baby need. So most kids need 11 to 12 hours overnight, not necessarily uninterrupted. You might still have some feeds in there, from 4 to 24 months, okay? Just to give you a couple little benchmarks that are very conservative. I think I'm pretty conservative. I've done a lot of breastfeeding, and I've sat on a board for a milk bank for a number of years. So, I think breastfed kids do take a lot longer to sleep through the night. And remember, critical thinking, what does sleeping through the night even mean to you? Because for some people, it's a 6-hour stretch. For some people, it's 11 hours, but they woke up twice to eat. To me, sleeping through the night means 11 hours without eating. And I would say most kids, if you're exclusively breastfed, that's not going to happen likely till 8 or 9 months of age, when you get 3 meals, two snacks well established. Okay. If you're formula feeding, yeah, it's a lot earlier for a couple of reasons. One, you have confidence how many ounces your kiddo ate during the day. So even pumping and bottle feeding, you have more confidence. You can also shift those calories out of the night into the daytime to make that happen earlier. So I have 4-month-olds that are bottle or formula fed that can sleep those 11 hours. Okay. And there's always outliers either way. I kind of hate giving these general ideas for this because it can set you up for these big expectations, but I don't know your story behind it. I don't know if you have low milk supply. I don't know if your kiddo has a little dairy intolerance or a little bit of reflux, which makes getting larger meals into them harder. Okay. So very general, exclusively breastfed, 11 hours, 8 or 9 months. Yes, it could happen earlier. Yes, it could be a little bit later. Formula fed around 4 months, could be 5 months, in there somewhere. Okay. But there's a few different criteria for that. Your nap amounts. So 4 to 5 months, most kids need 3 to 4 hours. Around 5 months, you transition down to 3 naps. By 6 months, most kids are on 3 naps and they get 2 to 3 hours of naps. They transition somewhere around 8 or 9 months to 2 naps, and then they need about 1.5 to 3 hours of nap time. And they transition down to 1 nap around 14, 15 months. And that's often when you can get this beautiful 2 to 3 hour nap, which is great. Okay, and most kids continue to nap until roughly age 3, 3.5. Okay. All right, so in summary, we talked about how your baby falls asleep for nights or naps is how she will expect to fall asleep with a night waking or after a 45-minute nap cycle. Okay, that's your sleep association or your sleep crutch. Your baby struggles with sleep due to a sleep crutch issue and or just being overtired. Not enough sleep in 24 hours, too many night wakings, too many short naps. You get caught in a negative feedback loop. All babies need roughly 11 to 12 hours of overnight sleep plus their nap time. Great sleep isn't just a quick tip. It's a methodology to approach 24 hours of your little one's day, including feeding. And the 5 pillars of the Helping Babies Sleep method are timing, feeding, messaging, responding, and all very important in achieving great sleep. Think about your own sleep. It's not really just about how you fall asleep. It's about what you did, activities you did during the day, what kind of foods you ate, your mental state, right? All those things are important. We'll talk about more about the science of sleep in the Baby Sleep Science webinar. You can head over there and catch that later on. If you're looking for more help on this, the Helping Babies Sleep method, the art and science, because it is both, the art and science of teaching your baby to sleep is available on Amazon. It's for babies roughly 4 weeks to 24 months. We talk about gentle newborn sleep shaping, no-tier approaches to helping your little one achieve a flexible schedule so you can be proactive in raising a newborn rather than reactive and trying to guess what's happening. It talks about sleep teaching after 4 months. So if you're ready to have an independent sleeper and get rid of the rocking and the pacifier and all the hard work that you've been doing, it will take you through step-by-step approach to achieving that. We're talking about night waking, naps, how to lengthen naps, all of that. And I'd love if you want to come follow me on Instagram at Helping Baby Sleep, where I also try and share helpful educational material with you. Thank you so much for being here. Please feel free to go check out our other webinars on baby sleep science and a variety of topics that we hope you find helpful. Thanks for being here, everyone.